He was once the shining star of HBO in the 1990s. He once lit up the box office with Jingle All the Way. The name Sinbad was the laughter of an entire generation of America. But today, at 68 years old, the comedy legend has to take trembling steps like a child learning to stand for the first time. And that is not even his greatest pain. He also has to face a storm of tax debts, bankruptcy, and a body ravaged by illness. What really happened to Sinbad? How could a star who once reached the peak of glory fall into such cruel and devastating tragedy? The answer will leave you both heartbroken and unable to look away. November 10th, 1965, in the town of Benton Harbor, Michigan, a hard-working industrial land, a baby named David Adkins let out his first cry. His father, Donald Beckley. Adkins Sr. was a strict Baptist minister, while his mother Louise was a gentle yet resilient woman. A big family's strict discipline and the sound of church bells became the soundtrack of his childhood. David stood out early among the neighborhood kids. He was unusually tall, eventually reaching 6 feet 5 inches as an adult. Everyone believed he would become an athlete. Indeed, between 1974 and 1978, he wore the jersey of the University of Denver, playing basketball, with the hope that sports could open a door out of Benton Harbor. He earned his varsity letter in 2 seasons, a respectable achievement. But the road to the NBA was cut short before it could begin. David left the court and suddenly turned in a new direction. Instead of choosing the safe path, he joined the United States Air Force. There, the young soldier became a boom operator on a KC-135 refueling plane, a stressful job that demanded absolute precision. Yet in that cold steel environment, another talent began to rise: comedy. On the base entertainment stage, David held the microphone and fired off hilarious stories about military life. The result, he won the Air Force Talent Contest, sending the entire base into an uproar. But his rebellious nature never disappeared. A few minor disciplinary violations led David to leave the service earlier than expected. Others might have seen that as a failure, but for David, it was a rebirth. He walked out of the base gates with one lesson: adversity is the best material for comedy. And it was at that moment that he began to call himself by the name that would go down in comedy history: Sinbad the adventurer, the risk-taker, the dreamer daring to reach beyond Benton Harbor. Rising to the top, the king of clean comedy of the 1990s. After stumbling through the early years, following his time in the military, Sinbad began touring, performing on small stages across America. The first real breakthrough came in 1987, when he was cast as Coach Walter Oakes in the hit sitcom A Different World. This wasn't just a popular TV show, it was also a cultural launchpad for Black America in the late 80s. His role as the basketball coach quickly turned Sinbad into a familiar face for more than 20 million American viewers every week, making the show one of the top-rated hits of the decade. That success opened the door to the golden opportunity HBO specials. In the early 90s, HBO invited Sinbad to headline his own comedy programs. Specials like Brain Damaged 1990, Afros and Bell Bottoms 1993, and Son of a Preacher Man 1996 became cultural events. Sinbad proved he could command an entire stage with nothing more than a microphone, a flashy suit, and the gift of turning everyday stories into bursts of laughter. In an era when American comedy was dominated by biting political satire or raunchy adult humor, Sinbad stood out as the king of clean comedy, a phenomenon who didn't need vulgar tricks to build his brand. Stories about parents, kids, and everyday family struggles became his comedic weapon. He didn't stop with television or stand-up. Sinbad leapt onto the big screen. He starred in Houseguest 1995, which grossed $26 million domestically, a solid figure for a family comedy at the time. But it was Jingle All the Way, 1996, the Christmas blockbuster, alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, that cemented his place in American film history. Sinbad played Myron Larrabee, a wild and chaotic mailman, battling for the season's hottest toy. The movie exploded with $130 million worldwide, becoming one of the most successful holiday comedies of the 90s. To this day, Jingle All the Way isn't just a box office hit, it's a holiday tradition replayed every festive season and keeping Sinbad's name alive across generations. That same year, he appeared in First Kid 1996, playing the Secret Service agent assigned to protect the president's son. The movie grossed $26.5 million in the US alone, giving Disney another summer hit. Then came Good Burger. 1997, a teen comedy forever tied to Nickelodeon culture. Sinbad often played the role of the fun uncle, an adult figure slightly clumsy but warm-hearted. This image became imprinted on Gen X and millennial kids who grew up laughing with him. He even launched The Sinbad Show, 1993-1994. Though it only lasted one season, it was a personal project that proved the Sinbad brand carried enough weight to headline his own series. His stand-up tours during this era were money-making machines. With dozens of sold-out shows, Sinbad could pocket between $50,000 and $100,000 a night. Those numbers placed him among the highest-earning comedians in America in the early 90s, just behind giants like Eddie Murphy and Bill Cosby. But Sinbad's legacy from this golden era isn't measured only by box office numbers, it's something more lasting cultural memory. He defined 1990s comedy with a style that was colourful fun, but also clean and full of heart. Sinbad wasn't just a star, he was the laughter of a generation. But the brighter the spotlight, the darker the shadows behind it. And it was during these peak earning years that the seeds of a financial disaster were quietly being planted. The financial collapse, taxes, and bankruptcy. In the 1990s, Sinbad was making money like water. In Hollywood back then, his name guaranteed laughter and big bucks. But behind the dazzling spotlight was a debt bomb waiting to explode. Sinbad didn't have a professional accounting team. With shows, contracts, and commercials pouring in, the money flowed, but income taxes were not filed properly. A whole decade of massive earnings turned into a chaotic mess of paperwork. By 2009, the bomb went off. The IRS revealed that Sinbad owed more than $815 million in taxes. The federal agency filed a lawsuit demanding seizure of his assets. That was only the beginning. In 2013, Sinbad officially declared bankruptcy. Court documents stunned the public he owed nearly $11 million with assets worth only about $131,000. Most of the debt came from unpaid federal and California state income taxes from 1998, 2006, and 2009, 2012. On top of that, he owed about $375,000 to American Express, around $32,000 to Bank of America, and millions more to tax authorities. The legal filings laid it out clearly. Sinbad had earned millions during his prime years, but lacked control. He himself admitted, "I wasn't on drugs. I didn't blow money on fancy cars. I just didn't know how to say no. I kept working and then let everything slip away." At the height of his career, Sinbad lived the luxurious lifestyle any Hollywood star would dream of. He owned a home in Hidden Hills, California, an elite neighborhood where neighbors included the Kardashians Drake and Justin Bieber. The house sprawled over 5,000 square feet on a 5-acre lot with 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and a separate guest house. It also had a recording studio, a pool with an artificial waterfall, and even a barn for outdoor parties. It was $1 million estate that symbolized his status as Hollywood's family star. But when the IRS clamped down on his tax debt, that dream mansion had to go on the market. Sinbad first tried to list it at $3 million, but under financial pressure, he was forced to cut the price. Finally, in 2010, the house sold for only about $1.8 million, far too little compared to the crushing debt he faced. Instead of treasure luxury cars or grand estates, Sinbad's declared assets painted a heartbreaking picture. A 2007 BMW 750i, a 2010 Lincoln Navigator, a 2010 Ford F-150, vehicles that were practical rather than extravagant, along with a few $1,000s worth of office equipment that was all the court could count as assets. The American press wasted no time in running headlines, from clean comedy to cleaned out. From the fun uncle of an entire generation, Sinbad suddenly became the tax debtor star, a symbol of financial ruin in the heart of Hollywood. The consequences were devastating. The moment news of Sinbad's tax debts and bankruptcy broke, his phone went silent. Calls from major film studios disappeared. Advertising contracts once worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for a short clip were cancelled one after another. Game shows and talk shows that had once welcomed him as a prestigious guest suddenly grew cold. On stage, the fall was even more painful. In the 1990s, all Sinbad had to do was step up to the microphone, and tickets would sell out instantly. In a single night, he could pocket $70,000 to $100,000, rivaling top music stars. But after the scandal, that figure collapsed. To keep working, he had no choice but to take gigs in smaller theaters, school auditoriums, even rural casinos. His fee dropped to about $16,000, barely a tenth of what he once earned, nowhere near enough to cover the debt and mounting interest. What hurt more than money was pride. From an artist who once stood on HBO stages with millions of viewers, Sinbad now performed before only a few hundred people in modest venues with dim lighting. The laughter was still there, but behind it lay bitterness. He'd once been so much bigger than this. Worse still, the press relentlessly pointed to him as a Hollywood case study, how a comedian who earned tens of millions could fall into a pit of debt. Many articles tied his name more closely to the word bankruptcy than comedian. His family also bore the weight. Sinbad could no longer provide the comfortable lifestyle that once came with fame. His wife and children had to watch him struggle with bills and mounting medical costs. From the peak of being a star who guaranteed laughter, Sinbad now lived under crushing debt, a tarnished reputation, and a career in decline. His financial tragedy stood as a brutal reminder. In Hollywood, the spotlight can vanish overnight. And after his financial empire collapsed, one natural question remained: who was still by Sinbad's side? The answer was his family, though that journey was far from smooth. Divorce, reconciliation, and family as a lifeline. In 1985, Sinbad married Meredith Fuller. They had two children together, Paige Adkins, who later became a director, and Royce Adkins, a rapper and young creator. But the marriage couldn't withstand the pressures of his career and grueling tour schedule. In 1992, Sinbad and Meredith divorced, ending what had seemed like an unbreakable bond. Yet life has strange circles. A decade later, after both had endured their share of struggles, they realized no one could replace the other. In 2002, Sinbad and Meredith remarried, one of Hollywood's rare reconciliation stories. To audiences, it reinforced Sinbad's image as a true family man. But marriage was no fairy tale. When Sinbad fell into the spiral of tax debt, family tensions exploded. It was during this crisis that he agreed to let WE tv produce the reality show It's Just Family 2011. This wasn't the light-hearted entertainment that Sinbad was known for. It's Just Family was different. It showed the world the man behind the stage. Sinbad drowning in debt, a husband and father struggling to hold his household together. In each episode, viewers saw unfiltered reality. Sinbad and Meredith argued over money. Daughter Paige complained about her lack of privacy. And Royce rebelled against living in his father's shadow. Ironically, this raw honesty was what drew viewers in. It was nothing like the clean, funny uncle image audiences knew from film and TV. This was the real Sinbad, tired, sometimes angry, sometimes helpless, yet still trying to prevent everything from falling apart. From a media perspective, It's Just Family was a smart move. At the time, WE tv was positioning itself as a network focused on family marriage and real-life struggles. Sinbad's show quickly became one of the channel's steadiest performers in 2011, drawing millions of viewers on cable. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it proved that the public still cared about how their childhood hero was surviving once the spotlight faded. Sinbad was no longer bringing laughter to the stage, but he touched audiences deeply by letting them see his vulnerability inside his own home. Though he lost his million-dollar mansion, his film contracts, and much of his wealth, his family remained his last anchor, and in truth, the most important stage of his life. But fate wasn't finished with him yet. Just as Sinbad was beginning to find balance again, an even more devastating blow was waiting. Health tragedy. The stroke of 2020, late October 2020. While America was struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic, a private nightmare struck the Sinbad family. On what seemed like an ordinary morning, he suddenly felt dizzy. His limbs went numb and he collapsed inside his home. Meredith panicked and called 911. In an instant, a house once filled with laughter turned into a battlefield between life and death. At the hospital, the first diagnosis was shocking. Sinbad had suffered an ischemic stroke. A blood clot had blocked the flow of blood to his brain. Doctors rushed him into surgery to remove the clot. The operation was successful, but the nightmare was not over. Just days later, Sinbad suffered a second more severe stroke. The risk of death was placed directly in front of the family. Meredith and their two children, Paige and Royce, were frozen with fear. Holding hands, they signed the consent forms for another surgery signing and praying for a miracle at the same time. After the second surgery, Sinbad fell into a prolonged coma. Then one morning he opened his eyes, but that moment was not a happy ending. Sinbad woke up inside a body he no longer recognized, unable to walk, unable to speak, unable even to perform the most basic tasks. The comedian who once dominated the stage now had to relearn how to move a finger, how to breathe deeply, how to form broken sounds. For an artist, losing the ability to speak is the greatest tragedy, but his family refused to give up. Meredith and the children launched a website called The Journey Forward, appealing for help from the community. They wrote, "Sinbad is a fighter. He has survived 2 brain surgeries, but the road to recovery will be long and costly. We ask everyone who has ever loved his laughter to join us and help him continue this journey." The plea touched the hearts of thousands of fans. Within weeks, the fund received hundreds of thousands of dollars. Audiences who had grown up with a different world. Jingle All the Way, or those unforgettable HBO specials, returned not to laugh this time, but to repay the laughter Sinbad had once given them. In 2022, the family shared the first hopeful update, and it brought tears to many. During a therapy session, doctors recorded nerve activity returning in areas once believed to be dead. Sinbad's recovery journey was still grueling. He endured hundreds of hours of physical therapy, relearning how to walk with a frame, how to pronounce each word again. The turning point came in 2024, when a video posted by his family went viral worldwide. In the clip, Sinbad is seen practicing walking with the support of medical staff. His steps were slow, shaky, but determined. Then he looked up, smiled, and said, "Miracles happen." That moment brought millions of people to tears. Fans commented, "I grew up with Sinbad. Watching him stand up feels like my own childhood just healed." This is no longer just the story of a comedian. This is the story of survival. The Miracles Happen video spread across every platform from Twitter to TikTok, becoming a symbol of hope in a world still reeling from the pandemic. From being the clean comedian of the 1990s, from being the bankrupt star drowning in debt, Sinbad was now seen in a different light, a man who refused to stay down. He may have lost the spotlight, his mansion, his health, but he never lost what mattered most, his willpower and his family by his side. And his journey from the heights of fame to the depths of despair and back again with each trembling step has turned Sinbad into living proof of one simple truth: even in the darkest tragedies, miracles can still happen. And in the midst of real-life heartbreak, the name Sinbad also became tied to one of America's strangest collective illusions: the Shazam phenomenon and the Mandela effect. Starting in the mid-2000s, a strange discussion began circulating on internet forums. Countless people swore they had once watched a 1990s genie movie called Shazam starring Sinbad. The memories were oddly vivid. Some recalled Sinbad dressed in a purple genie costume. Others described scenes of two kids asking the genie to help them find treasure, and some even remembered the ending. The problem was that movie never existed. Hollywood never produced a film called Shazam with Sinbad in the lead. What made the story even stranger was a coincidence. In 1996, there really was a genie movie called Kazam starring Shaquille O'Neal. Most likely, collective memory had blurred together Sinbad's colourful outfits, his work hosting kids' shows, and the movie Kazam, creating a false memory that became known as Shazam. This phenomenon was quickly labelled part of the Mandela effect, a term describing when large groups of people share the same false memory. The name comes from the fact that many people once insisted Nelson Mandela had died in prison in the 1980s, even though he was released and later became president of South Africa. Shazam went on to become one of the most famous examples of this effect. America was buzzing. Newspapers ran analysis pieces. Psychologists explained how memory works while fans doubled down. No, I'm sure I saw that movie. For Sinbad, it was a bizarre mix of comedy and frustration being tied forever to a movie that never existed. The peak of the frenzy came in 2017 when Sinbad decided to prank the internet. Partnering with College Humor, he released a spoof lost footage from Shazam. In the clip, he wore a genie costume and acted out old grainy scenes that looked straight out of the 90s. The video went viral instantly, racking up millions of views within days. Some fans sighed with relief. See, I knew the movie was real. But the truth was revealed, it was just a parody. Sinbad had deliberately trolled those who refused to let go of their false memory. The stunt didn't just make the internet laugh, it turned Sinbad into a cultural meme. While many stars were being forgotten with time, he had found a way to bring his name roaring back in the digital era, linked to one of the most fascinating social and psychological phenomena. In a way, Shazam is proof of Sinbad's lasting impact. If he hadn't already been so deeply imprinted in America's memory as the colourful, fun-loving figure who connected with kids no audience could have collectively invented an entire genie movie starring him. Scholars have even cited the Shazam effect in studies of collective memory. Sinbad, once the king of HBO stages, had become the central figure in a lesson about how human memory works. The clean comedian of the 90s had unexpectedly become the symbol of a collective illusion. Sinbad proved one thing: whether in reality or in false memory, he will always remain a part of America's shared memory. There was a time when people thought Sinbad had vanished forever, surviving only as a memory of the 1990s. But fate seemed unwilling to let that light fade completely. Just when audiences believed they would never see him again, Sinbad would suddenly appear like a familiar ghost from childhood, freezing millions of people in their tracks for a few seconds. The surprise. Comebacks. In the years following his stroke, Sinbad couldn't just dive back into movies. His body had to relearn everything from scratch. The first 6 months were spent only practicing deep breathing and moving his limbs. A year later, he could stand with a walker. By the second year, he was finally strong enough to form a complete sentence. During this long recovery, Sinbad still tried to stay connected to his fans with surprise appearances. On American Dad, he showed up for only a few minutes, but that was enough to make fans scream, "That's him, he's back." His witty timing and unmistakable humour felt like a reunion with a long-lost family member. Then came The Lion Guard, the continuation of The Lion King's legacy, where Sinbad left his mark with his deep, warm voice embedding himself in the memory of a younger generation that had never known his 90s glory. Beyond film, Sinbad chose an unexpected path USO shows for the US military. On remote bases in front of soldiers facing real danger, Sinbad delivered laughter as medicine for the soul. And then in 2023 came a true explosion. In Good Burger 2, Sinbad appeared in a nostalgic cameo. Just a few short minutes, but enough to send social media into chaos. Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook were flooded with clips screaming, "He's back! Oh my God, Sinbad is back!" The emotional fanburst turned a cameo into a cultural moment. Yet all of these comebacks were still just small sparks. Fans were waiting for the day Sinbad would once again stand tall on Hollywood's main stage. And then the impossible happened. The real comeback. In 2025, Sinbad's name rang out across American media this time, not because of nostalgia, but because of a shocking breakthrough. After nearly 5 years of rehabilitation from a wheelchair to shaky steps, he was finally invited to join a major project. Tyler Perry, the Netflix king behind billion-dollar blockbusters, suddenly announced that Sinbad would star in his new film Straw. The news struck like lightning. The whole world asked the same question. Does Sinbad still have the strength after his stroke? The answer arrived on premiere night. On screen, Sinbad was not a man just out of a hospital. He was a warrior, an artist, resurrected from death. Every look, every line carried the weight of someone who had stood face to face with mortality. Tyler Perry, known for being tough on actors, could only say 2 words he delivered. American media exploded. Variety called it one of the most miraculous returns in Hollywood history. The Hollywood Reporter shouted, "From stroke to stardom, Sinbad's miracle comeback." On social media, the hashtag Miracle Comeback shot straight to the top of worldwide trends. Fans wrote, "I cried when I saw him on screen again." But more important than anything, Sinbad had redefined the very meaning of the word comeback. This was no longer just the story of a star returning to movies. It was the legend of a man who refused to surrender to fate. Sinbad had returned, not just to the screen, but to the hearts of an entire generation. True wealth and legacy. In the 1990s, Sinbad's wealth was measured in million-dollar mansions in hidden hills in 6-figure paychecks for a single night's performance. But today, after bankruptcy, after a stroke, those measures no longer mean anything. His true wealth isn't in a bank account. It lies elsewhere in the love of his fans, the steadfast presence of his family, and a recovery so powerful it defied medical expectations. And Sinbad didn't just receive, he gave back. The small videos he and his family shared clips of him learning to walk again, or smiling as he managed to speak a few words, became a global message of hope. Sinbad's legacy, then, is not money or contracts. It is the real-life story of a man who once touched the highest peaks, then fell into the deepest abyss, yet still rose again. A story in which every generation can find a part of themselves. And when he suddenly returned with his role in Tyler Perry's Straw in 2025, the world saw it clearly. Sinbad is still here, still alive, still fighting. His life today may be quieter, but it is richer in meaning than ever before. And now, the final words belong to you, the audience. If you ever laughed because of Sinbad, ever watched one of his movies or shows, or if you're simply moved by this journey of rebirth, share that memory. Leave a wish, leave a comment, because every word of encouragement adds to his strength on this road to recovery. Sinbad once gave us laughter. Now, it's our turn to give him faith.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on the screen.